This is homework set 14, properties of radicals. Problem number 1, or question 1, asks us to compute the square root of 20. Now there is no number, no whole number that I can square to get 20. I mean, maybe with a fraction or decimal, but no whole number. But I can do this. That's 20. Do you know any square roots or perfect squares that'll go into 20? Yeah. You know, how about 4? 4 goes into 20, so how about 4 times 5? And then when a property of radicals, I can break this apart into a multiplication. Now, I don't really need that dot, so I'll just write this. Square root of 4 we know is 2, so how about 2 square roots of 5? And that's the best we're going to do with that. Square root of 18x squared, well, that 18, I don't know a square root of 18, but I can break 18 into two numbers, one of which I know the square root. Now, 3 squared, well, 2 squared is 4. 4 doesn't go into 18, but 3 squared is 9, and 9 goes into 18. So I'm going to rewrite this now like this. I'm going to write as 9 times 2, and then the x squared. And then if I break it all apart, I'll get square root of 9, square root of 2, square root of x squared, and then I'll get a 3, square root of 2, and an x, because we're assuming all variables are positive. So then I'm just going to write it like this, 3x square root of 2. Now you probably don't need to do all that. If you can see it right from the beginning, to see that in your head, you can just go from here right to here. Question 3. I don't know the square root of 32, but I can break 32 into two numbers, one of which I know the square root. Now 32 I could write as 4 times 8, but I can do better. Get the biggest square that you know, like 16. So 16 will go in here, so I'm just going to write this. Well, I'll write it like this. It'll be 16 times 2, and then you have the x squared and the y squared. So I'm just going to write it now. Square root of 16 is 4. Square root of x squared is x. Square root of y squared is y. And then what's left? Square root of 2. Question 4, 2 times the square root of 150. Now 150, I don't know the square root of that, but I can break it down into two numbers, one of which I do know the square root. How about this? 2 times, now I know the square root of 25. Now 25 will go into 100 4 times, and I've got a 50, so 2 more of those. So how about 25 times 6? And then I'll get 2 square roots of 25, square root of 6. 2 times 5, square root of 6. So how about 10 square roots of 6? Now what we're saying is that this number here, up here, that number right there, is the same as this number right here. Now if you're not, I got that 25 and 6 pretty quickly because I've been working with these numbers a long time. As we go through these homework problems, you'll start to work with these numbers and you'll just kind of remember what they are. Now, in question 5, we've got a fraction. Don't let that worry you. Usually those things will cancel out. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write that 1/3 again. And this square root of 54x cubed. How about if we wrote this? 54. I know the square root of 9, and I know that 9 goes into 54. So how about 9 times 6, and then I've got an x cubed. So I'm going to write that as x squared times x. Now this will give us 1/3. Now, just do this. The square root of 9 is 3. The square root of x squared is x. Now, what's left? This 6 and that x. But now, 1/3 of 3, right? 1/3 of 3 is 1, so I don't need to write the 1. So I'm just going to write x square root of 6x. Question 6, we've got 3 over 2 times that square root of 24x cubed. Now, I'm just going to bring that 3 over 2 down, bring that 3 halves down. Now, 24, I'm thinking 4 goes into 24 6 times. So how about 4 times 6? And then we've got that x cubed. Now, I'll deal with the x cubed in a minute. But this is going to be 3 halves times, now, let's just do this. I'm not going to break them all apart. What is the square root of 4? Square root of 4 is 2. Now, what is the square root of this x cubed? Well, sometimes we're going to have a radical, an index here with an exponent. Now all you have to do is take this index, divide it into the exponent. I'll show you. This is supposed to be a 2. We just don't write the 2. So if you did this, index into exponent, right? The 2 into the 3, what do you get? 1 with a remainder of 1. 2 will go into 3 once with a remainder of 1. Now what that does, it tells you that 2 x's will come out. I've got 3 down here. I can bring, well, 1 x will come out. I can bring 1 x out, and 1 will remain under the radical. So I'm going to write now, this is the square root, what's left? Oh, before I do that, I'm going to bring that 1x out. Okay, I can bring 1x out, and 1 will remain. So I'll bring that 1x out. Now here's what remains. The 6 remains, right? That's 6. So bring that 6 down, and 1x remains. Then 2 into 2 is 1, so I get 3x square root of 6x. And that closes out the first part of this homework set 14.